Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the webinar today. Hello, good morning. Hopefully folks are getting into our room here. Hopefully audio, visual is working. If I could get some verification from folks out there on the webinar, if you're able to find that questions box and just type something in there. Good morning, hello. I can see you, I can hear you. Just type anything in there for me. Awesome, great. I'm seeing a few things pop in. Perfect, wonderful. Thank you guys. So we've got things working today. Also now you guys know how to ask questions. So 2 ways to ask questions today as we go along. We've got a lot of different presenters. We're going to be sharing from all kinds of different districts on today's special webinar. So we asked that the best way to do questions is probably going to be to type them in the chat box so we can answer them as the presenters go through, but you can also raise your hand. So you see a little hand. If you click that, then we can unmute you. You're all just automatically muted when you come into the webinar room. We can unmute you if it's easier for you to ask a question that way. So, but the best way, just get them in the chat box or that questions box, and we'll get those answered as they roll in. Hopefully you're having no issues with audio visual, but if you are, just type it in the questions box and I'll see if I can work with you direct on getting your things going. So with that, by the way, I'm Nicole Embertson, the chair of the Center for Technical Development. We're excited that you're attending one of our bi-monthly webinars that we've got a long-going series. You can find the full series and what's coming up on the CTD website. You can also find them in our newsletter, and we do our best to also send out special announcements on Gov Delivery. So if you're not connected into Gov Delivery yet or get our newsletter, please do sign up, mostly so that you don't miss anything, so that you are always getting what's coming up, what's new, and training and certification and webinars and so on. So we're really excited. If you ever have a webinar request or idea, also please share that with us. You can send an email to info@wactd.org. You can see that right on that screen there. Send an email anytime, or training at that same wactd.org address. So either way, we'll get you in the queue. We love new ideas, especially if you also have a speaker in mind. So thank you in advance if you want to share some ideas with us. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jan Thomas, the CTD training coordinator, who's going to be leading us through today's webinar. So Jan, take it away, and thank you everyone for being here.
Nicole, and good morning, everybody. This webinar, as Nicole said, is one in a series of webinars that the CTD is presenting. And for this week, we wanted to try to tackle kind of a COVID-related scenario. We're all adjusting in a number of different ways, working from home and all sorts of things, but certainly our outreach and education efforts have had to adapt as well to our new COVID situations. A lot of our previous approaches to outreach, in-person workshops, tabling, summer activities, just really aren't possible right now. And so we have really had to change things around. And so we wanted to hear from some folks and kind of share ideas about how different districts are tackling these changes that we've been making. So that's kind of the topic of our webinar today. And I'm trying to get my slide, there we go, to advance, so you can see that. So in developing the webinar, we recognize that there's some pretty different distinct areas of outreach, and that the approaches for the outreach and materials will differ between these different areas. And so to that end, we reached out to some education and outreach staff from across the state and across kind of all of these topics. So we have these different areas that really will require different approaches. And so we've asked them to share what they've been doing, their successes, and maybe some not so successful things, some lessons learned. And so we have, I think, 9 speakers for you today, and we're just going to go through, and each of these speakers is just going to talk on one or more of these topics on how they've been handling things at their district. And We do encourage questions to just come in as they can, and we will try to ask each speaker questions when they're done presenting. And then we can also have a kind of a larger Q&A towards the end of the webinar. So with that, I will introduce our first speaker. Screen there. So our first speaker is going to be Nikki Wolf with King CD. And there's Nikki. Hi, Nikki. Good morning.
Hi, everyone. Good morning.
There you go. Okay, take it away. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Nikki Wolf. I'm the Education Program Manager with King Conservation District, and I'm going to share a little bit about how we adapted our Where the Water Begins workshop, which normally is in person with a section like this at the beach, some in-classroom presentations, and how we transitioned to webinar, where our attendees were at home watching from a screen and learning from our subject matter experts. So I'll just briefly give a little bit of background about our workshops, talk about some of the changes we had for 2020 and switching to a webinar. Oops. Can you guys still see the full screen? Sorry.
Looks like we've got a black one. Yeah, it looks like you're at the end of your slideshow. Just go back maybe a couple slides.
Oops, looks like it canceled out. That's okay, I can still.
If you click escape and then restart it, it should work.
Sorry, everyone. This also happened during our webinar.
This, by the way, this is the beauty of adaptability. Everyone has to learn how to make it go really wrong and then fix it. There you go. That looks perfect, Nikki.
Awesome. And I'll also talk about some of the lessons learned and results from the webinar. So just a quick background. We hold these workshops for marine shoreline landowners every year, and we rotate at different locations in person. We have a few hours of presentations from 3 subject matter experts, and then we have an optional beach walk. And so this is a picture from Discovery Park in Seattle a couple years ago. So we try to hit home some of the concepts after the webinar by giving people kind of the visualization on the field. So this year we transitioned to a virtual event, and we made the change about a month and a half before we were scheduled to have the workshops. So typically these are Saturday morning events, and we decided to try transitioning to a webinar both for a Saturday morning time and Friday afternoon. And we worked with our 3 subject matter expert presenters, and they teach about geology, vegetation management, and ecology of Puget Sound. And so it was definitely a change for them from getting the in-person workshops to this webinar. So we did a dry run, and we actually invited some other CD partners to come and listen to the presentation and provide feedback before we went live. Some of the changes we also made this year, we added more targeted Facebook advertising. So we always send a postcard to everybody that's eligible for this program. So those that live within 200 feet of shoreline areas. So we added the Facebook advertising, and then we used Zoom meetings, and we incorporated some polling to try to keep the attendees engaged. And we encouraged everybody, like we are here, to ask questions through the chat feature. So as people had questions that would come up, they would type them into the chat, and then our facilitator would ask the questions at the end of the presentation. At the beginning of our webinar, we also provided a quick introduction to Zoom and an orientation, and we recorded all of the webinars. And our team that was working on this, we had the 3 presenters from different agencies. We had 1 person that was facilitating and keeping us on track, talking about some of the major concepts. And then I was helping kind of on the customer service side. So as people were getting, signed in and registered, answering any calls or emails when the webinar was getting started. And we had probably about, 10 people between the 2 that would call and say they lost the link and needed that emailed again, or they were having difficulty. And then we had 1 person running the poll. So we had 3 behind the scenes people helping to run the webinar. And so the results, we had 60 attendees for the 2 webinars. And this is pretty on par with where we usually land, with about 30 people per in-person class over the years. We did see a huge increase in registration. So we had over 100 people register for these events. And usually registration is just a few people over the number that actually attend the in-person workshops. And then we recorded the video. I know Marin's on the phone now watching, but she's actively editing the video. So we're gonna post it onto our website and make it available. And we've had several requests from people that registered but couldn't attend. And then we got really positive evaluations. We've had some people that have attended these classes a few times in person. And so it was great to hear the really positive feedback. For lessons learned, we definitely needed the dry run, and we would practice for about 45 minutes before each presentation, and that was very needed. It was a new platform for 2 of our presenters using Zoom, so we practiced sharing screens, and we still had some technical difficulties, but I would definitely encourage lots of practice. I'd say another lesson learned is that facilitation is key. So we had a great facilitator that is used to delivering the workshops in person, and she was able to really kind of guide us along, and having that separate facilitator from the tech and audience support was crucial. And then one of the pieces of feedback from the evaluations is that attendees wanted all of the information earlier. So we sent copies of the presentations a couple days in advance, along with some resource packet materials. And the request was that they would like more than a week in advance in the future. And then one of your next presenters, Kari from Snohomish, attended these workshops, and we debriefed. And one of the big lessons learned for me is to use Zoom webinar instead of Zoom meeting, since people can, in Zoom meeting, choose to unmute themselves or turn video on. And we really wanted to focus in on the presenters. So there were a few of us behind the scenes turning screens off and muting people as needed. So these are just a couple highlights. And I just wanted to share about our workshop transition to a webinar. So thank you.
That's very interesting that you had this kind of the same attendance. That you said that more people registered than you had attend, though. You said you had over 100 registrations, but the same as your in-person attendance. Is that right?
Yep. I looked at past year's data, and we've been holding these workshops since about 2006. And on average, we get anywhere between 15 to 50 people that show up at any one of these. So kind of averaging out around 30. And most years we get about 35 to 40 people that would register. So we had a spike in registration.
Okay. Yeah, nice. Just a reminder to type your questions into the question box, or you can just raise your hand directly and we can call on you if you have any questions for our presenters. I don't see any questions in the box right now, so I think we can move on to our next speaker, and just go ahead and feel free to type in questions as they come to you, and we will try to get them answered.
Great, thank you.
Oh, I have one question here. Rachel asks, do you think people register to get materials and then ghost the workshop?
Possibly. We did have some people that reached out, since it was a 3.5-hour webinar, so it was really long. We didn't change the content or the timing of it. We delivered it as is. So I did have a few people reach out and just ask for the resource packet and for the sign-up sheet to sign up for technical assistance. But we really want people to go through this workshop before having one of our planners come out, since we kind of have a backlog list for our Marine Shorelines program right now.
Okay, great. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is going to be Kari Kwas from Snohomish CD. And switch this over there. Good morning.
Hello. Okay, are you seeing hello, I'm your host?
Yes, that looks good.
Okay, great, wonderful. I did attend Nikki's workshop and it was really great. It's probably something I wouldn't have attended typically if I would have had to drive down to Renton or somewhere in Seattle to see it. So I think that's part of a really big benefit of these webinars is that we get to have other people attend who may not have attended in the past. So I enjoyed it. So what I have for slides is kind of a mix of the slides we've used for the different webinars we've done at Snohomish Conservation District. And I think we've done 7 or 8 at this point. And the topics have ranged from urban, residential to our habitat stuff, living with beavers. We had one of our conservation leaders do a presentation about his tree farm up near Arlington. And so we've kind of fumbled through. I definitely have lessons learned. But what we've tried to do, Sarah Rosero and I have been the 2 main facilitators for these and the people behind the scenes. And like Nikki said, it's nice to have more than one, just because someone can field questions and someone could ask the presenter and have that banter going back and forth. It just makes it easy in case something goes wrong. So we both have our slides where we can say, hello, I'm your host. When we begin our webinars, we start with a screen, something similar to this that is just sort of welcoming and on the screen that people can see while we're getting settled, and how Nicole does it so well of, put your thing in the chat so that way they can test that kind of stuff. But it gives us an opportunity to introduce our topic and get people settled in. So here's Sarah and her welcome screen. And we've, I think, changed these depending on our topic as well. This one was a septic workshop. This was kind of our joke thing. And this is an event we had last year for Orca Recovery Day, talking about orcas and everybody meeting in person, and then how now they look like this. And when you can be in an audience, people are laughing and that's kind of funny. However, when you're talking on a webinar, you don't get that feedback. So you got to kind of make it amusing for yourself would be my tip. This is the one Sarah uses. Now she has a dog, so she can do something with that too. We do a nice title screen with the name of the webinar, our partners, an image that works. This is what ends up going onto YouTube. So that way when people look for the webinar later, they can find it pretty easily. And then we do our funny thank you slide. So as Nikki spoke, we definitely have done practice runs for all of these. I really recommend it just to make sure that people can transition between their slides pretty easily. It also just is fun because we're just kind of goofy. A lot of people are trying to figure out how to do this kind of stuff. We also provide intro, and I know Nikki did this in hers, but how to interact and do the chat and everything. We make sure people realize that they can be in their pajamas. It's not a big deal. We can't see them because we do use Zoom webinars. So really the only people that we can see are the panelists and the hosts, not the attendees. We also have the question and answer tab, and I think you can see at the bottom right of this, it says CC. And I wanted to point out that on one of our webinars back in April, we actually did have an attendee request closed captioning. And I found a vendor called ACS, and they could have actually had someone who attended our webinar and would have been signing. What we learned is that the woman who had asked for the assistance wasn't a sign reader because she became hard of hearing later in life, so she could read it. So we hired an entity. This woman typed really fast. She used to do the closed captioning for a TV news program, I think. So our speaker presented, the attendee who could not hear was able to read the closed captioning, and then we had that at the end, which we could also provide to the attendee. So she was thrilled. I thought it worked really slick and great, but that is possible. If someone is hard of hearing, you have that capability. We also do one introduction slide about who we are. We learned on the very first webinar we did that we talked too long about who we are and what we did. But realistically, people, if they've attended our class, they know who we are. So we can say very briefly, and then we can go into, upcoming workshops that we have, but then move on to the topic that you're actually presenting about, because that's why they're there. So we don't want to linger too long. In this case, I did a program for I Love Lakes, so I talked about that, because if you do have a captive audience, get them the information they need that you may not be able to share with them in another way. And then I do usually slides for my speakers. So getting their contact information, who they work for, some examples. So these are just examples. Elisa had spoken about for our Beaver program. And then here's one for Terry. She did our septic workshop, and you can see the toilet paper and the kids. I mean, again, trying to make it fun, because people have this much of an attention span, and when you're now on a screen and you look at a screen all day, it makes it even harder. So trying keeping it light. So again, another thank you slide. But lessons learned, practice, practice, practice. I would say that if somebody isn't speaking like they do on this one, to not have everyone be sharing their screen. And I think, Bob, to hear and show what that looks like. So on the right there, that is how it displayed on YouTube after the fact. And so I'm actually blocking my slide, and I don't mean to, and my other two speakers are sort of staring in space. So I recommend making sure people hide their video and mute while they're not talking. There's settings in Zoom, so you can say speaker view, or you can move it to the top of the screen. So there's options for that kind of stuff. So pay attention to those little details. On our very first webinar, I think when COVID had hit, so this is back in April, we had over, I think it was 350, 375 register for a webinar we did with King County, the wastewater treatment facility. And unfortunately, what we did not know is that at that time we had a 100-person cap on our account. So our numbers started to go way up for the attendees, which was great and awesome. But then we realized that people were sending in notes, oh, it's full, I can't get in. And it was like, oh my gosh, we didn't know. So make sure you know your limit or warn people that the first 100 will get in, or you can extend it to something else. But that was a huge lesson learned. We were able to record that video, which was great, and it has 210 views on YouTube. So it's important to make sure you can share it out. I think someone had asked about whether or not they ghost the webinar so they can get the material. I think it's a combination of things. If we try and throw in some little line about, hey, if you can't make it at this time, please sign up, because then we know who's interested. We try and track zip codes, so that way we know they're in the service area we're dealing with. But then we can send out the video after the fact. Also, we send out a survey, so that way we know, did they like it, did they not like it? Early on, it was about what day of the week might work, time of the day, so we've tested that too. So lots of different things to try. I think that's really all I have, but we've definitely pivoted this way because it's the way that we're able to connect with our audience, and we have another 2 this month. So. And our partnership breakfast is today, and that's on Zoom as well, because we can't meet in person. So we just keep adapting. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we do have a couple of questions here for you. The first question is, who did you say you requested the closed captioning from?
Well, one of our attendees who registered for the class sent me a message and said, is it possible to have closed captioning? And so I had not done that before. So I started contacting the speaker and our partner agency, and we were able to find a third party to do it. So really the person registers as an attendee, comes in as a panelist like we are on this one, and then you grant them power to do the closed captioning, and they type away.
Also, there was a comment about some of these. One of our speakers will show you a lot of these platforms now have that feature available that's built in while someone's talking, as well as there was a comment from one of the panelists as well that says YouTube offers closed captioning if real time isn't possible. So there are a lot of now newer options that are auto built in for closed captioning.
Yeah, and it's nice. The YouTube videos will actually, you can just add it and it'll sort of track whatever you've said. But in this case, in order for her to watch it live, she needed somebody to be typing the words for her. Yeah.
We have another question for you here. Did you live broadcast to Facebook, and how?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yes, we try and do that as much as we can. Um, it depends upon our speakers. In some cases, we've had, if it's an internal thing, then yeah, we're absolutely going to share and we record it. But in some cases, they don't want it recorded because this is their livelihood. So then we do not record. And I think with our septic speaker, she was unable to because of her employer to record it. So then we did not broadcast to Facebook. But what I find is that if we're paying attention to the questions in Zoom and then it's broadcasted to Facebook, so somebody's watching those comments as well, but we end up with people who didn't even realize they wanted to watch a webinar about living with beavers, and yet they're watching it. So I think that it's been a really great audience for us because it just shows up as SCD is broadcasting live, and then they can watch and learn as well, something that they didn't expect.
And then I have one more question. What did you say the topic for the webinar with 300 plus attendance was?
Oh, sustainable food gardening. So I honestly think we were right at the cusp, right? This was a class that was actually scheduled. It was supposed to be at Brightwater, kind of right on that King County, Snohomish County line. And typically they can only have about, 75 people in that room, or maybe 100. So the fact that we were able to move it to online and then have it available, we had somebody show up from Australia. It was very bizarre. How they even heard about it, I'm not quite sure. Maybe Eventbrite or something, but it was very, very popular because I think we were right at that beginning of the growing season, and so it just worked out great.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I think I've heard that several times, that just really being able to reach a wider audience. It's an ongoing theme with moving to these virtual platforms. So
yeah, and I
thank you.
Definitely tracking zip codes or asking questions. I know Nikki did a great job of that on her webinar for King. Are you in King County? Are you in Snohomish County, or where? So that way we can actually go back to our funders and say, hey, yeah, we hit the target audience we were looking for. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. And we are going to
Jan, I think we might have lost your audio.
Can you hear me?
There you go. That's perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, folks. I am having a very big delay this morning on my end here. But we are going to hear from Clark CD next with Ashley Smithers and Zora Oppenheimer.
Hey, it's Zora. Ashley, do you want me to go first, or are you going first?
You can go first, and
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yep, I can see your screen and video.
Okay. Zora, you can show your video if you'd like.
Okay. Hi. Can we see your video too, or just mine? Anyways, okay.
There you go. You
go.
can see both of you. Perfect.
Hi, so I'm Zora Oppenheimer. I'm the district manager for Clark Conservation District. As I'm sure most of you are familiar with all the districts, we are in the very southwest corner of Washington, just across the river from Portland. We're kind of in a little kind of odd island because we're really in the Portland metro area, but the districts to our north and east, and basically the districts around us, are all a lot more rural than we are. So we're very much more similar to Portland or the Seattle metro area. We previously had the Clark Food and Farm Network. We got an NACD grant in 2016 or 17 to do this urban ag. We did a map, lots of resources, and it just kind of sat there. and we would occasionally update it. But when this COVID stuff hit, I was doing a lot of talking with other partners in our area. We have a new food hub that's just recently started. We've got a couple smaller organizations that do food stuff, Clark County grown, and we've got WSU Extension. And so we were all kind of, talking about, okay, what can we do? And there was a lot of talk of, let's get a grant to do this. As most of you, I'm sure, know, that process is long. And we had this system kind of set up. And then Ashley was connected with her husband, I'll just say her husband, who put together a website for Portland. And she kind of brought to us, what if we do something like this for farms? So we developed the Clark Food to Go, which is housed sort of in this Clark Food and Farm Network. And we developed it pretty quickly, and our intent was to put farms up there that had food currently. So it wasn't supposed to be a listing of all the farms in Clark County. It was just, if you have food right now or in the next few weeks, because this was back in probably early April that we started this, you put your farm up here. And we aren't selling, we're just connecting people. And I would say that it has been mildly successful. It's a good, people seem to really like it, partners really like it. I think that by the time we were able to really get the word out and people were very interested, a lot of other things had started, like our Vancouver Farmers Market started online ordering, and other things kind of started happening that made this not quite as necessary. But it got a lot of attention, and I think it got a lot of attention because we did it very quickly, and it's clean, it's easy to use, and I'm glad that we did it because we can use this for future. This isn't just for COVID. We can continue to use this and just use it in a slightly different way. We do need our farm map updated. And so I think that this would be a great tool to map each of the farms. So maybe right now they're just points on a map and you can click on them and you get a little bit of information. But perhaps in the future, you click on it and it goes to their listing on our Clark Farm to Go, or there's ways that we can change it so that it's not just for this sort of COVID time. But yeah, that was kind of what we did. We moved quickly. We had partner input and a little bit of partner help, but pretty much it was Ashley and I with a little bit of partner help throwing it up there and trying to get the word out a little bit.
Yeah, and I'll just add, like, on the personal note, so my husband is a web designer and he designed a Portland or PDX to go, and he worked with somebody up in Seattle and San Francisco, and so he just designed this like back end thing and then had it kind of go everywhere, and it was kind of a first response to connecting people in the restaurant industry to consumers. And so I just asked him, I was like, hey, could you do this? And so he worked with Zora and I to just kind of reskin. So it was something that he already had developed, and so it was just kind of that like grabbing onto it, and it was totally free for us. And then we were able to kind of, again, get some feedback from some of our partners and have some of these kind of specific to farm and the consumers ways to connect people to the product. So
and I'll also chime in and say that this whole COVID thing and this process that we went through with these farms, it it highlighted an issue that partners in Clark County already know, which is the listings for farms are really inadequate in our area. And I know that there are efforts to maybe produce something statewide by the Health Alliance, I think. And I think that WSU Extension is going to be updating their farm finder. And we don't want to duplicate efforts. But I also think that our area in particular is really ripe for something like this, because people are very interested in food and how they can buy locally. But we don't have the same support that a lot of the Portland metro districts have. So it sort of highlighted this, and we ended up, a grant application came out of sort of the partnership efforts that happened to put this together with WSU Extension. And yeah, so it as these things do, it kind of grew, and I'm glad that we did it. Are there any questions?
Yeah, so folks, if you have questions, just put them in the chat box. And it looks like there's none at the moment, but if they come in, I can have you ladies answer them on the side while we rotate to the next speaker. So folks, please feel free to put your questions in the chat box, and we'll have our presenters answer them as they come in.
And I think Ashley's going to talk about our watershed stewardship now, so I'm going to pop off.
Okay, great, Ashley, thanks. Or thanks, Zora, we'll get to you now, Ashley.
Yeah, so just on another note, we had watershed stewardship, and I just threw up our website to kind of just show where I've been housing that information online. So this is a workshop that we were doing ahead of time that was a 6-week class, in-person class, and so I transitioned that to an online format. So that was a little bit different because, again, it was like multiple weeks and then trying to transition to kind of a one-off webinar of sorts. And each of those classes were originally like a 2-hour long in-person class, and for webinar purposes, I condensed it down to 1 hour. And each topic matter, which you can kind of see here, I have a different expert that comes in and talk, and so I worked with them to help condense their topic down to the 1 hour. And as I mentioned before, when it was in person, we had it for 6 weeks long. And I decided instead, when transitioning it to the webinar platform, to move it to 5 weeks. And that's just because the last week was really like a overview and like celebration and just bringing everything, like wrap up event. And so it just kind of felt a little weird in the webinar format. And so, yeah, so it was, I got a lot of feedback, great feedback, positive feedback. It's been a super popular in-class workshop. We had about 50 people that attended one or more of the webinars. So versus before, when I would have that you had to register for all 6 or come to the whole class, and I would usually have about 20 people, like 15 to 20 people attending the classes. This one I transitioned to saying you could come to just one of the topics if you wanted to, or come to all 5, and then I am giving like prizes of sorts and like certifications if they attend all 5 and give like survey. I track it by if they fill out their surveys and stuff. And then I also instantly put, after the class, I would put it onto YouTube, and then you know, put it onto our website so that people could go to our website and watch it afterwards. And I had a lot of really great success with that. Because again, not everyone could attend. I got some feedback about, like, especially parents and stuff in the evenings, like that being around bedtime, and so not being able to attend. But liking to have the option to still view it later. And yeah, I think overall it was good, and it was interesting to just see how many people. I think I ended up having about 10 or so people so far that have actually gone through all 5 of them, and probably close to 20 that have watched at least 3 or more. So still in that like smaller 20-ish range for viewing all of them, but I just felt like the outreach, especially with some of the topics, was really great to just have people come and just see one if they wanted to, and then hopefully want to get involved in others. A couple other fun things that I discovered with this is just the ability to do things like taking some videos ahead of time and then bringing them into the webinar. I didn't do it with the watershed stewardship as much because I had a lot of the other presenters do that, and so they did a couple of videos, but I put on some amphibian ones and one with turtles, and so I was able to take videos of the turtles ahead of time and then put those into the presentation, as well as I had like live turtles that I was showing. So I just think that there's some opportunities that weren't necessarily available before that we've been able to capitalize on. So yeah, I just wanted to share that little bit. So yep, that's all.
Thanks, Ashley. One question here. Someone asked, how did you track that they watched all of them?
So I did that through, well, so with I put it on Zoom, and so I could see like how they, you know, the attendance records, but I had a survey that I had people fill out, and you can see like the survey button here, that's through Smart Sheets. And so I just tracked people that way in a Smart Sheet. And yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I think we will move on to our next speaker. We're going to hear from Hillary Spokane.
Hi, everybody. I'm not sure if you can see me, but hi, everybody.
Looks good.
Awesome. And can you see my screen?
Yep.
My PowerPoint? Perfect. Okay, so yeah, hi, everybody. I'm Hillary. I'm the outreach specialist here at the Spokane Conservation District. And I'm just going to share some ways that we here at the district have been just trying to really connect our consumers to our local farms and our foods here using social media, and also another fun little virtual way. So back in 2016, the Spokane Conservation District did receive funding from the NACD Urban Ag Initiative as well. And so one of the projects that came out of this was our South Spokane Farm Corridor. And so this project was really a way for us to connect urban farmers and create a farm-to-farm community in a geocentric location of Spokane. And then also just on top of that, to really use this corridor also as a way to teach and educate consumers on why it's so important to have local food and to support urban farming. And so since COVID, we've really seen an uptick. It's really caught wind, the South Spokane Farm Corridor. We've had a few news articles printed about some of our farms. And so I know that originally we started with 6, and now we have a collective of about 16 farms who offer a variety of products, from vegetables to flowers to meat, honey, just a wide range of products. And so one of the things, and also I would encourage you to check out the South Spokane Farm Corridor website. So we were able to develop a website for these farms where they have bios and photos of their farms and little information. And then we also developed an app for it too, so consumers can have it just right at the tip of their fingertips if they're feeling like, you know, they want to go get some fresh veg on the weekend or after work one of these days to look up farm stand hours. So just to kind of help and support these farms, we also created a South Spokane Farm Corridor Facebook page. And as a part of being part of the corridor, we offer each of these farms trainings on social media and how it's important and how everybody likes, you know, our favorite F word, free. So it's free marketing, free advertising. And so we really kind of, you know, lay the groundwork for them of how they can be successful by using this page and giving them editor access to share their information. So it's really just been a great thing for all these farms to just get some additional exposure. And then on top of that, what I like to do is I'll run sort of like some campaigns, at least a couple weeks out of every month. And so this is one that I did just on, you know, small farms in Washington. And then what we did is we highlighted that week some of our urban farmers out there who have, you know, small farm stands, gave them little shout outs, talked about what they had to offer, you know, little tidbits of how they got started with farming. And it was really great. We had great interactions between customers. Customers were excited when they got to see their favorite little small farm or one of their friends being, you know, celebrated for what they're doing. So this was just kind of a way to also just play off of it. I feel like we're always, you know, trying to just celebrate our local farmers, especially now during a pandemic when, you know, going to the grocery store might not be the most comfortable thing for people. It's like, let's get outside, you know, throw a mask on and go see your local farmer. And one of the biggest drive homes that we do with the South Spokane Farm Corridor, and we say it over and over again, is know your farmer and know your food. So just really driving that home. On top of that, like I said, I like to do some campaigns. So this was like pollinator week. So what I did is I reached out to some of the farms in our South Spokane Farm Corridor group and said, hey, it's pollinator week. You know, do you have any like fun facts or anything? And so this was actually a picture that one of our farmers sent of a bee swarm. And so, you know, we did a little tidbit, a little information about that. But then we also, you know, talked about Green Bee Farm and how you can go get their honey, you know, 2 days a week, and just a way to, you know, uplift that farm and celebrate them again. And then to play off of that, I like to do these little quizzes that you can create. They're super easy to create on Instagram, and then you can also share them to your Facebook stories as well. So just kind of a fun thing, you know, as people were following along that whole week with the campaign, to say, okay, let's test your knowledge, like you've been learning about it all week. And so these are really cool. If you haven't tried them on Instagram, they're super easy to make. And the thing I like the most about them is that you can actually get the results of the participants. And so it's kind of nice to use that, you know, for just a bumper and education, you know, material, like, oh, we can, you know, maybe dive in on this topic a little bit more, something like that. So those are just some fun things that I've been doing just to kind of help promote our local farmers and promote the consumer to farmer relationship. So this is a really fun project that we are just about to roll out this month. So typically every fall, Spokane Conservation District hosts the Farm and Food Expo. And so this year, with everything regarding COVID, we realized that we weren't going to be able to do an in-person conference. And so we tossed around the idea of doing a virtual conference. And, you know, I was sitting in my kitchen one day and I was listening to a conference and I was not looking at the screen at all. And so that's what kind of brought me to this idea. I was like, well, let's do a podcast. You know, a lot of our audience members like to be outside, maybe not held hostage behind a computer. So this is going to be a way for us to share all of the education and resources that would usually be shared at the Farm and Food Expo on land management, conservation practices, and also just to celebrate some of the really great stewards of our land here in our region. So we're really excited to be rolling this out. This will be, you can listen to it for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, everything. So this was just an innovative way that we wanted to make sure that we could still share all of the resources and education that we would at Farm and Food Expo, but also give our local farmers a platform to also be able to come on the show and talk about their farms and you know, the conservation practices that they're making sure get on the ground. And so I am sure that a lot of people are pretty well versed, maybe not. I know that here at Spokane Conservation District, we haven't dabbled a lot in video production. So Stacy Selko, my education coordinator, got in contact with a gal who was working for City of Spokane, who had produced a really cool, you know, short little video. And we did a little bit of research and came up with this. And if you have Adobe Creative and Premiere Rush, super easy to use, super user friendly. We're starting to roll out some small videos that we're going to be releasing on social media and in our newsletters and stuff. But I just wanted to share this. It's pretty cost friendly. We were able to get a wireless mic, 2 tripods, and then you needed a little adapter. But this was really all we needed for our package for our short videos. So that is what I have. Anybody have any questions?
Thanks, Hillary. Yeah, if folks have questions, please put them in the chat box. I'm not seeing anything at this time, but as they come in, Hillary, I'll pass them your way and we can get them answered as we move on to the next presenter.
Okay, thanks guys.
Thanks, Hillary.
We did have one comment about the good idea for the podcast, which I would second that. I think that's a nice way to kind of be virtual, but get people away from the computers, like you said. So that's a great idea.
Yeah, I have some birthdays this week, so.
Our next speaker is going to be Carrie King from King CD. There she is. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Now we can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay. And is my video on as well?
Not yet.
Okay.
See.
Okay.
Okay, that looks great. Perfect.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Carrie King, and I'm the Farm Program Manager at King Conservation District. And like you guys, we've all been forced to change the way that we do business. And how we sort of pivoted early on was collaborating and having weekly meetings with partners that included nonprofits in King County, a number of agencies, farmers, WSU, and other service providers. And during these weekly meetings, we are trying to determine the needs of farmers and producers and how we might help them pivot to be able to shift to e-markets. And one way that we did this was surveys so that we could best respond to their needs, but the farmer phone calls were definitely probably the most valuable. I think the most farmers we had on one phone call was 25 or 30, and it was really interesting to hear their needs. And over again, the two that floated to the top were always financial and how can we share information among each other in a common place without having to wait for these farmer phone calls. And then the board said, well, what are you guys going to do about COVID, and how are you going to try to help farmers? So different teams, education and outreach and farm planning, we all came up with different ideas. And this is what was presented to the board. Not all the ideas came to fruition. It turns out many nonprofits were already working on transitioning to an online market, so we scratched that one. And the Victory Gardens was kind of like a lawn to lettuce approach, and there were a lot of people that were already working on that as well. So we chose to focus on expanding the food bank by moving some of our grant monies from our regional food program to pay farmers to plant, and then provide that food for local food banks to sell or to give away, excuse me, and to also bring on additional local food banks that weren't previously in our program. And then one thing that we noticed from our phone calls with farmers is that a lot of dairy farmers and beef producers were missing from the phone calls. And so our dairy planner would reach out to these folks before the phone call and say, hey, we're having this big webinar, we would like you to sit in. And they would say like, well, what is Zoom? How do I get it on my computer? So the Farm Helpline and Navigation Service, we were like, okay, let's just go back to grassroots and let's build a tool where we can schedule appointments with people and call them and walk them through the services that might be available to them that they might not know about because they really weren't able to participate in these phone calls and these webinars. And information at that time in March, April, and May and June was changing so fast on a day-to-day basis that it was really tough to keep up on and be in the middle of planting season. So we'll dive into each of those two tools that were left that floated to the top. So I think I already explained this one about how we just shifted monies around within our regional food program. And then the Farm Helpline and Navigation Service. This was not original work. We compiled a team of 4 different people, and we rifled through thousands of websites, and we put the links to the different website. It's in a Google Doc, and it's like a narrative almost. So it's not a script. You're definitely having a conversation with the person, but you're asking them what their needs are. And we're like, okay, we have these 8 different buckets. And so if your needs fall under funding and financial, well, did you know? And so we would walk people through different tools, including like grants and loans, but also mortgage deferment programs. So sometimes these phone calls can get really personal, but we do have those types of relationships, especially with our dairy farmers, because we're down to 20 now from 46, not all due to COVID. That's been happening progressively over time. But and people have also thought of questions later and called us back. And so it's just a way to further develop that relationship. And we want our cooperators to have us on speed dial so that if something does come up, we can help them through this. Yeah, it's interesting because King County and WSU, we worked really closely with them, and they're like, okay, so what kind of newfangled tool is this? And we're like, it's not, it's a phone call actually. So it kind of threw a lot of people off, but some of our cooperators need a little bit more help than others. So a good old fashioned phone call seemed to provide a lot of bang for the buck. Similarly to what Zora and Ashley spoke of earlier, TILT does have a map of local farmers, but King County received a lot of money, COVID money, and they saw what the city of Seattle did for local restaurants to try and help local restaurants survive COVID. This is intended to connect people with local food, not just through COVID, but and beyond. Ashley, I'm not sure, it sounds like your husband may have developed the restaurant web app here in Seattle, and then the Harvey, the person who directed that, bundled that package up and all the coding and gave that to King County, which enabled them to develop this web-based app fairly simply without having to rewrite all the code because it was already done for them. And so the hope is that when things cool off a little bit and people aren't so busy, that this gathers synergy and other counties are able to participate, and that TILT will ultimately manage the final product. So they used Esri, our GIS, and you essentially plop a location on the map and it tells you where the local farms are and what they're growing and where you can pick that up at their farm or at a farmer's market or wherever they're selling. So similarly to what other CDs have done, I just thought I would mention that. And then this is not our idea, but we're certainly helping to promote this idea of an online farmers market. And I thought that was really clever. So I wanted to share that with you guys today. And on our phone calls, if people are interested, we'll just go ahead and register for them, their farm for the on the app while we have them on the phone, because not all of our folks are as technologically savvy or even have the time to do this, to enter their business on the online farmers market or on the local food finder. So if we can do that for them, we don't mind providing that extra level of customer service right now. And that's it.
Great.
Thank you, Carrie. We don't see any questions in the box right now, and in the interest of time, I think we'll just keep on moving. So go ahead and type in your questions if you have them, but for now, I think we will move on to our next speaker, Diane Fish from Kitsap.
So Diane, I think you're on mute if you want to. There it is. Perfect. Oh, Diane, I think you're back on mute. If you can.
There we go.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. My name is Diane Fish. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes, that's great.
Perfect. Okay. My name is Diane Fish, and I'm at the Kitsap Conservation District, and I manage the Grace Garden project here. And I would have to say right up front that where digital outreach is concerned, it hasn't always been the forte of KCD. And so it's interesting because I actually come from an education background in my most recent professional life, where I taught online classes for 25 years for several colleges. And so I've always been a real strong advocate for a digital presence. And so we're working our way into that. And so that's kind of exciting. One of the things that we do is we also received an NACD grant. We've actually received 2 of them now. And so we do the Grace, I coordinate the Grace Project, which does, we do a food bank farm for vegetables for the food banks. And then we do workshops for urban ag, plus all of the other stuff that we're doing and promoting local food systems and all of the natural resource conservation that we do. So we do a lot of tabling events. We work with a lot of partners. We also promote healthy farms, and then we do restorative justice opportunities. One of the things that I was asked to talk a little bit about is our focus on diversity and inclusion, and certainly our work with incarcerated individuals on the community service work crew from Mission Creek has been something that we have focused on. Unfortunately, right now we are not able to work with them because of COVID, and so that has created some interesting challenges for us. But as far as our focus on healthy, sustainable, equitable, and resilient food systems, we've done it through technical assistance. The Grace Project provides on-site demonstrations, so we do a lot of tours. And so what we're doing now is we're doing them all by appointment, socially distanced with masks, and we work with local farmers on like things like drip irrigation and water catchment, which is, you know, something that people are very interested in, and a whole bunch of those kinds of things, in addition to season extension with the high tunnel. And so we have continued to do on-site tours. We're just doing them individually and by appointment. As far as the workshops, we used to do a lot of workshops out in the community, particularly with food bank participants. And originally when COVID hit, we had thought about shifting them to Facebook Live events. We had been doing gardening classes. Unfortunately, the food banks that we work with are so resource stretched that that isn't something that has been very, that we've been able to do, because they are just, their volunteer base is primarily elderly, and so they aren't able to respond with as many volunteers, and they're just trying to figure out what their distribution models look like. And so it has been a very stressful time for everybody. So we've focused on working with partnerships and pushing our farm to food pantry program this year, which is very similar to the King County Farm Share. And so through the restorative justice piece, just to briefly talk about, we have a really diverse group of people that work with us through the community service work crew. And one of the things that we are very, very conscious of is the power dynamic that exists there. The crew is they're in a very vulnerable position. And so we're very careful in our interaction with them. And especially since the world has kind of imploded in terms of, you know, like looking at diversity, inclusion, and those kinds of topics in the workplace. We have been investing in a bunch of training resources. Fortunately, through a partnership that we have with the Sustainability in Prisons Project, a number of our staff were able to participate over a couple of weeks this month in a training opportunity done on Zoom, very well done, with a lot of resources that actually linked us to an online classroom where they housed the resources. And so that had a synchronous and asynchronous piece. So that's something that you guys might think about through your like stewardship or watershed training processes. There are a number of online platforms. Canvas is the one that we used. If you're doing it in partnership with WSU, I don't know which online platform that they're using, but that's a definite possibility. And I would be happy to talk to anybody about the logistics of designing online opportunities so that you can have people participate in like a brief webinar, but also like watch videos in an asynchronous kind of environment as well. But what we've got here is our gals that ordinarily would be packing produce for the food bank, and they're not now. So one of the things that we've done, the Department of Corrections actually has a push this year to have facilities growing food for local food communities and local food banks. And so we have been providing them with plant starts. They have a fairly large growing space at Mission Creek, which is our Department of Corrections facility. And so we have continued to partner with them. We just do low contact, no contact drop-offs. And we wave at the crew members through the fence from about 20 feet away. And fortunately, they have not had any COVID infections at their facility, and they want to keep it that way. So that's what we've been working on with them. In terms of our pivot in COVID-19, with regard to technical assistance, we have been doing it on the phone. We had a number of projects. We were just getting started with our rain garden project year, and so we did a bunch of mailings actually, and we were actually able to catch up on a bunch of our remote work with our technical assistance with drive-bys and doing O&Ms and that sort of thing. And so we really worked with our landowners in that regard. With regard to workshops, so we have a current NACD grant, and we're supposed to be doing a bunch of outreach on that. And so we've been really struggling with that, figuring out the Zoom thing And so we did a couple of gardening workshops, and then we put a bunch of gardening videos, how-to videos on our YouTube channel. And so we've dramatically increased our online presence. And one of the things that we just did is that we put our annual meeting online. So we did a video for our annual meeting. And we've worked really hard at partner communication this year. A lot of the CDs are working on doing local food promotion. We have partners that are already doing a really good job about that. And so one of the things that we did is we've had regular partnership meetings, particularly in our food systems work, that allow us to continue connecting with the farmers in our community. One of the things that we do have is we are the farm to food pantry contractor for, sorry about that, for the Washington State Department of Agriculture Farm to Food Pantry Initiative. And so one of the things that we have is we're trying to connect people with the farmers market so that they are able to use the SNAP-Ed match program. And so this week, actually, we're continuing to do a series of farm to food pantry showcases. We have about 15 farmers that are participating in farm to food pantry this year. And so we have been, we've been doing showcases, and we've been getting a huge amount of activity around those. Just like people are really excited because, of course, it really puts a face on the farmers that we've got. And we have it's pretty low tech, but we actually have a listserv that has been in place for about 15 years. And most of the farmers in our community are on that listserv, as well as, we just have a lot of conversations with farmers. As part of the Farm to Food Pantry program, we're connecting with farmers and doing pickups. And so we're going to the farmers markets and we're having conversations with people. And so that socially distanced, high touch approach in this digital environment where everybody's leaning has been very valuable to us. And that's, I think, been the most important thing that we've done, is that we have worked to kind of maintain those relationships. The other thing is that we are moving forward with more training for our staff and more conversations. We have a weekly staff meeting via Zoom, which is one of the ways that our office is staying in contact, because most of us are working remotely. And we've been able to do a number of trainings to help with conversations around that. We have a couple of staff members and an AmeriCorps service member who are people of color, and they're very active in local social justice movement. And a number of our farmers are very engaged, and so that has been something that has been we've been working on that, and it's not always been completely smooth. Some of it's been a little rocky, but those uncomfortable conversations need to happen, and so we're grateful for the opportunity that we've had to do that. Are there any questions?
I'm not seeing questions in the box yet. If folks have questions, please feel free to put them in. If questions come up, we can turn them over.
The one thing I would say is that as I'm watching this and all of these great resources like Spokane's podcasts and the various web resources and all of the things, it would be great to have all of these collected somewhere on the CDT website or something, so that we can direct people to these amazing resources that are all over the state. Because I'm just listening to this, I'm just blown away by all of the cool things that people are doing.
That is a great idea, Diane. And in fact, we probably will collect all of the websites and all of the information that's been presented today and put those, a list of links on the CTD website with a recording of this webinar. So great idea. Thank you, Diane.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, so I think I'm not sure Janice, but I will turn it over to our next speaker. Kara, I'll let you, I can see you. Let's get your presentation in go mode. Your video looks great, your audio looks great.
Okay, so can I show them real quick the subtitle
Yep.
feature in this? If you guys can see my screen. I do want to show you guys a new feature that I found on PowerPoint. If you are online through Office 365 and on PowerPoint via the web, so not just pulling up a PowerPoint presentation, but via the web, you can go into the view mode right here at the top. And there's this checkbox here to use subtitles. And in the subtitle settings, you can change the subtitle language. I'm going to change it down here to Spanish. And then I'm going to start my PowerPoint. And hopefully you guys are going to be able to see a Spanish translation of what I'm saying down there at the bottom as soon as it kind of gets caught up. Yes, maybe. Maybe not. It worked yesterday. Oh, here we go. So can you guys see that?
Yes.
Great. So when you're presenting a PowerPoint, perhaps on our Zoom webinars or Zoom meetings, this might be an easy way to pull in some, a way to take care of the language barrier that some of our participants might be having. So you can just turn off the use subtitles up there and continue. So I'm Kara Calvert. Hello, everybody. Some familiar faces on here today. Nice to see you guys. As you know, Franklin Conservation District has a robust education program, mostly in classrooms, in schools. And so our world came to an end on March 13th when they closed schools. And I had a lot of educators around the state that kind of were struggling with what to do. I was able to keep several of them employed through the end of their contracts. And what we did is very quickly started looking at our programs and taking some professional development to figure out how this online shift in schools was going to look. We were anticipating going back into the classroom this school year. And so in June, we quickly realized we were going to need to transition to put all of our programming online. And what I've learned through this professional development is that, number one, schools are going to be asked, or teachers are going to be asked to be teaching the standards, and that alone in their online instruction. And the second thing is that I learned if you are doing videos for schools, which we are primarily going to be moving to, they probably shouldn't be more than 5 minutes. Instructional videos for children should remain about 5 minutes of instruction is what they're saying, you know, because attention spans are very short. So what we did is we went through a large professional development shift for the remaining part of the school year. And now we're into the shifting all of our programs virtually. And I just want to give a huge shout out to these 5 educators that I had on staff that stayed with me through COVID, end of the school year, and they just rocked my world and the education portion of our outreach. They just put so much heart and soul into moving our programs forward. So Week is one of our programs that's delivered statewide. And so what did we used to do? Well, we used to go into the classroom 5 lessons, 1 each day of the week, and do hands-on science with students, 4th and 5th grade. This year, it's going to look a lot different. We are condensing it. We are creating hands-on kits that are very much smaller than what we would give them in the personal setting. We're going to deliver those to the teachers to then distribute to the students. And then we're going to have these instructional videos online available for the students to either walk through themselves, or the teacher can instruct them and walk them through it together. Again, those videos are no more than 5 minutes long. Drain Rangers is a program that is taught from the teacher's side. I do teacher-led workshops or trainings for the teachers to teach them this curriculum. So I'm moving that now onto a virtual platform. I'm going to use Zoom meetings for these workshops for teachers. The typical Drain Ranger workshop was 3 hours. I'm probably going to condense that to no more than 2. And I've been taking so many trainings and so many workshops online now. I've really seen some good tips and tricks and things to keep teachers engaged and motivated, so that they're not just sitting there and, you know, folding their laundry or cooking dinner or doing other things. They really need to be engaged the entire time, talking with their peers, doing activities, chatting in the chat box, things like that. So that's a new learning thing for me, as well as transitioning all this to that virtual format. The next one I had was my Junior Drain Ranger program with just K through 2. Now we are creating videos for these kiddos, for the littles, as well. And on these videos specifically, and I want to emphasize this with our Week program as well, what we're doing in order to ensure that teachers, principals, parents are happy that this is being brought into their classroom during this very small allocated period of time that teachers are going to have with their students. We're going to be putting the standards that we're meeting at the bottom of all of our screens. So during the video, if a principal pops on while a teacher is showing one of our videos to their students, they're going to see the standard kind of faded in the bottom. So they know exactly what we're doing to help those teachers meet those standards. I think it's really important because teachers are having this very short amount of time now for instruction with their students in this virtual format. So we got to make the most of these short periods of time that we get. Finally, I have, and let me just say, we are creating a coloring book for this program as well. We used to go into the classroom and make a project with these kiddos, and now we're just going to send a coloring book home that's specific to our watershed to help them kind of get that in interaction, or that hands-on piece is something to look at and do, hopefully with their parents. And then salmon in the classroom, we used to have a tank at every school in Franklin County here. And I'm working closely with Rachel Little over across the river in Benton County. Well, and we're coordinating this idea together of going virtual with our salmon in the classroom program, primarily because at any point in time during the school year, schools may be shut down again, right? And so we don't know if we're going to be able to have salmon in our classrooms and not have it be an overwhelming problem. Second thing is they're disinfecting at a new level in our schools that wasn't happening before. And when I heard a school district mention foggers in classrooms to, fog the disinfectant in the areas, I got really concerned about salmon being there. So we're moving it online. I just have one tank at my office that we're going to put a webcam or several webcams on, so students and teachers can log in at any time and kind of check the growth of their salmon and participate in salmon in the classroom that way. Rachel and I have also talked about creating these short, little less than 5-minute videos that we can help teachers teach salmon in the classroom as well, and really just boost our visibility that way so that they're constantly seeing us and learning about salmon as they go through the program. And then finally, I want to encourage you guys, if you do any classroom-based education with students, to take part or reach out to the Reimagine Ed. They are helping teachers learn how to teach online. So it's really important that you understand all these platforms that teachers are using, all these opportunities and software systems that they're able to use, that each school district and each teacher and each classroom might be different. And so it's helpful to know what those things are so that you can meet the teachers where they are. And then finally, I learned about that great PowerPoint tip from Leslie Fisher. She is my education technology guru. So if you don't have a lot of experience working in the classrooms with their technology and the things that they're doing, Flipgrids and Schoolology and Screencastify and all these things, check out Leslie Fisher. She's got some great webinars that will help you get caught up to speed. So if you guys have any questions for me, you can reach me. I'm Kara at the Franklin Conservation District. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Kara. As we transition to our next speaker, quick question in there. How are you distributing the coloring books?
We're going to be distributing those just like we'll be distributing our Week kits. We're going to drop them off to the schools with the teachers. We're assuming that teachers are still going to be having packet pickup time with their students. If not, there's still lunches being distributed. So however, we're going to leave that up to the teachers to figure out how to distribute to their students. But if they want them to have the hands-on piece, they'll have to figure it out. We'll get it to the teachers. They'll get it to the students.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kara. Our next presenter is Amanda Newell from Cascadia CD. Amanda, do we have you on audio?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. Do you have anything to share for your screen? I can see some notes, but if you'd prefer, we could turn that piece off. Either way.
Let me switch screens.
Right
yeah, I'm just going to share our website. There we go. Can everyone see that? There's a couple of video thumbnails on there.
Yep, that's perfect. Thank you.
Great. So I'm going to talk about how we're trying to move some of our outdoor youth education programs to a virtual format. The main one I was going to focus on is Kids in the Forest. That was our big program for the spring that unfortunately got canceled. It's we work with 3rd through 8th grade students, but the focus is 5th and 6th. And we typically would take them out into a local forest or the shrub steppe ecosystems and just kind of give them ecology lessons, show them what a healthy versus unhealthy forest is, and then talk about how wildfire, climate, forest management all kind of play a role in maintaining those healthy forests. Of course, there's nothing that replaces the actual field experience, having kids actually out in the natural environment, learning by seeing, touching, smelling. And then another really important aspect is connecting with local professionals. We see it as, you know, a potential way for students to learn about career paths, and it's just really valuable for them to be with those professionals. So as an alternative, we've created a series of videos based on the lessons that the students would have gotten in person, and we had the same professionals that would have been leading the students through activities featured in the videos. So they're still kind of getting to connect with those professionals, just not in the way we would prefer. But anyway, so we've got a series of videos here on our website, and I'm not going to play any of them because they're like the shortest one is 4 minutes. We tried our best to keep them around 5 minutes because that's what we had heard too is the attention span, but a few of them got a little longer. But anyway, you're welcome to check those out at any time. They're just on our Kids in the Forest page of our website. And at this point, we're working with teachers on how we can best support them using the videos. We don't want to create any additional work for them. We know they're all really overwhelmed right now. So kind of just trying to get feedback from them. And so far we've heard back from a few, and they said that having supplemental materials like worksheets and quizzes to go along with the videos would be really helpful. And then we're still really wanting to encourage students to get outdoors. So we're trying to work with the teachers on a way to maybe give extra credit, or maybe it's part of the assignment for the students to view the videos and then actually go out into the forest or the shrub steppe and, you know, take photos of themselves or videos of themselves, you know, looking for some of the elements that we had mentioned in the video, or just connecting with the natural environment in some way. We also have one of the videos is for creating go bags for fire season. So that could be a way that students could, you know, be a little bit more interactive at home and pack their own go bag and have it ready to go for fire season, which is pretty long here in Central Washington. So yeah, just we're still kind of at that stage of sharing and getting information from teachers and trying to make this as beneficial as possible. We do also run a high school program called Kids in the Creek, and we were really hoping we'd still be able to get students out even on a limited basis in the fall, but unfortunately that's not going to happen now. So we're also working with those teachers on ways that we can bring this material into the classroom, or, you know, just to their homes, and hoping that later on in the fall or into the winter, we might be able to send in some guest speakers, but of course we can't plan on that for now. So the videos that we're creating, we're trying to make them useful and meaningful for long-term, not just during the pandemic. For our Kids in the Creek program, we've actually gotten requests from other counties and states and even other countries to use the materials that we already had created, which were more like train the trainer type videos. So we're hoping that this is a way that, you know, we can share these great programs with other professionals and, yeah, have them have a far reach. That's kind of where we're at now. Anyone have questions?
Thanks, Amanda. I think for time, if folks have questions, please put them in the chat box. I'll have Amanda answer. And if the audience will indulge us with just a couple extra minutes for our very last presenter, we've got Shannon Bly from Whidbey Island CD. So she will be our last presenter today. And again, thanks for just giving us a couple extra minutes so that we can get her in here. And then we can wrap up and folks can stay on if they've got any additional questions. So take it away, Shannon.
Hi, can you guys see me?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Perfect. I don't have a PowerPoint or anything, I'm just going to talk a little bit about, we moved our farmer group online. So we have the Whidbey Island Growers Association, which is a meeting, a monthly meeting that we hold with farmers. It's a potluck and educational presentation, and we co-coordinate that with WSU Extension. So how it used to go was that we would find presenters, they would travel from all over to give the presentations. And because Whidbey Island is 50 miles long, is very geographically segregated into 3 specific regions, north, central, and south. So we would try to, oh my gosh, sorry, my dog, rotate the meetings by location so that, you know, when we had one on the north end, more north end farmers would come, south end, same. And then centrally is where WSU Extension is, which is obviously our favorite place to have it because there's technology, there's bathrooms, there's chairs, people know where it is. And our attendance the last couple years has been pretty low, maybe 10 people or less, with the exception of our dessert social in August and our gift exchange potluck in December. Those are pretty big events. We have over 30 people that usually come to those. And we just canceled actually our August one, which I still haven't recovered from because I really wanted all those desserts. And there's also a farm tour, which is my favorite. But so in April, we moved all of that online. Our attendance has been basically double. We have at least 20 people every time. The time commitment that we're asking for our speakers and our participants is way down. Instead of farmers having to stop farming, make a dish, drive, travel somewhere, and then travel home, all they have to do is just roll in, pop on Zoom, kids can be in the background, you know, whatever can be going on. And for speakers, you know, they don't have to travel all this way to get here. They can just pop on Zoom as well. So for organizing and for having participants on, it's been a lot easier. We've also been able to extend the reach of our group to San Juan County and have farmers and farm support organizations participate, which is really great. That's something that I want to do, is really facilitate our relationship with San Juan, because they have a really similar situation to us, being on an island, having a lot of small farms, things like that. So we have similar obstacles. But what we used to have was a potluck. And now we ask people to come on at 6:30. The presentations are at 7. Come on at 6:30, have a chat, connect. And we have had no takers whatsoever on that. So while Zoom has been really effective in replacing how people view the presentation, and it's been really helpful for logistics and time commitment, it has not replaced that kind of community connection aspect of it, and people sharing information and sharing their experiences and stories and trading that type of information. We're very rural. We have areas without broadband. We have, you know, terrible reception. If you're on West Beach of the island, like you roam in Canada on your phone. So our online platform and our way of reaching farmers online is really not effective. So we have these more of an audience in our presentations, which is great. We also have this time that we used to spend doing presentation or logistics for the presentation. So what we're going to be doing is going out and spending that time chatting with farmers and hearing about their goals and challenges so that we can know what kind of presentations in the future to give, because we want to be effective and useful in giving these presentations. And you know, we have a lot of people now logging on, but what exactly do the farmers need? What do they want to know in the wake of COVID? It's kind of up in the air. I don't know if anyone knows what we need to know because we don't know what the world is going to be like in the future. So I think we're working on that connection. We're going to have a trivia night for our December normal social gathering. So hopefully that will be fun and people will, log on and farms can compete. I think they'll want to do that. And and so I think in the future, we're going to just need to work on that connection aspect of it because we're not really able to move that to the online platform. So yeah, I think overall it was a really good move, but we still have things to work on.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. Just remind folks that they can put any questions in the chat box or raise a hand for any of the speakers that we've had so far. Thank you for indulging a few extra minutes, everyone. Much appreciated. I'm going to turn it over to Jan to wrap things up. If we can get your audio rolling.
Yep. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hopefully. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much again to all of our speakers for sharing your ideas. I think we've heard a lot of cool things going on around the state, and we will, as Nicole mentioned, post this recorded webinar and contact and hopefully some of these presentation materials from our different speakers today. And thank you to the audience for being patient through this webinar with so many different speakers. A little bit of transition time there and a little bit of audio issue on my end, but appreciate you being here. And I wanted to just plug our webinar series. We do have a webinar coming up about every 2 weeks. Our next webinar is a clean energy rundown for your districts and clients. Hopefully you guys can see that now. And so that is going to be coming up on the 27th. We have another webinar on the 10th regarding web presence and how to create a free and accessible website for your district or other social media. And then for those of you still working through that planner designation process, we've got another recap on the NRCS process and CTD certification coming up in more late September. So you can find the full lineup of all of our webinars on the CTD website under training events. And if you ever have any questions on that, you can email either training@WACTD or info@WACTD. And if you have any questions after this webinar, if you think of anything, go ahead and feel free to email one of us here, Nicole or myself as well, and we can try to connect you with the right speaker. Like I said, look for all of those posted materials on the website as well. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and end. And again, thanks for hanging on a couple of minutes here, and have a great day.